Good afternoon. This public hearing of the Joint Committee on Advanced Information Technology, the Internet, and Cybersecurity will come to order. I would like to remind the members of the committee and those participating on Microsoft Teams virtual platform to mute your microphone at this time until you are recognized to speak. Welcome to all who have joined us here today. My name is Michael Moore. I'm the Senate Chair of this committee, and I'm also joined here by my colleague and the House Co-Chair, Representative Tricia Fowler-Bouvier. And with us today are the following Senate members of the Joint Committee: Senator Barry Feingold. And Senator Piano is on the line. I'd like to go to my House Co-Chair if she wants to identify the House members.
Thank you so much, Senator Moore. It's a pleasure to be working on this committee with you. I certainly welcome all the members of the public who are here both in the room and online. We're really proud of the fact that we hold hybrid meetings because we think it allows for the best public participation. Joining me here today on the committee, House members, we have Vice Chair Jim Hawkins. Representative Jeff Turco is here. Representative Adrian Ramos. Representative Margaret Scarsdale is here. Representative Chris Flanagan and Representative Joe Moschino. Thank you for all the members for being here. And I just want to emphasize that stakeholders on all of these issues, your voices are important to us, and we want to hear your testimony. And Senator Moore has the unenviable job of keeping time limits and all that today, but that doesn't mean your voices are important. And I would just like to let people know the House is in session today, and so you're going to see this really odd thing happen in the next couple hours, and that the House members are going to be getting up and leaving. We need to go vote, and then we will return. Thank you very much, Senator.
I apologize for not recognizing Senator Piano is the Vice Chair of the committee on the Senate side. So today the committee will hear testimony on 40 pieces of legislation on topics ranging from digital governance, broadband, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and cable television. These are areas that are undergoing significant change with the potential impact to every facet of our lives. The committee is hearing testimony on these bills today to gain insight into how to responsibly grow and support these industries in a sustainable manner while also protecting individual rights. Over 30 people have signed up to testify in advance. If you have not signed up already and would like to testify in person, please make sure you sign in on the list. I think is it still outside the door? Chair Fowler-Bouvier and I and the members of the committee are here to listen and learn. We want to thank you for being here today. We are conducting this hearing in a hybrid manner, taking testimony from individuals in person and remotely using Microsoft Teams platform. All others listening to this hearing who are not members of the committee or not signed up to testify may view a live stream version of this hearing on the legislature's website, malegislature.gov. An archived video of today's hearing will be made available on this site within a few days. Any individual or organization may submit written testimony and supplemental information on any of the bills on the docket to the committee via email no later than July 22nd at 5 p.m. Those submissions shall be made to the email address on the public hearing notice. Order of testimony. Legislators and public officials will be taken out of turn, as is the tradition of the committee. Committee members who registered to testify will be called first, followed by other legislators who registered. We will then hear testimony from those who pre-registered, followed by other testimony. For today's instructions for today's testimony. For those who are here to testify, when I recognize you to speak, please unmute your audio or come to the table in front and state your name. If you are affiliated with an organization, the bills you are testifying on, and the position on said bills. And then please begin your remarks. Individual testifiers will have up to 3 minutes to speak, except in the case of panels of 3 or more persons. In those cases, a maximum time of 10 minutes will be imposed for the entire panel. Due to the volume of testifiers, we request that the time limit is adhered to so we can hear from everyone today. Committee staff will keep time and an alarm will go off when the 3 minutes are up. When an individual or panel testifying virtually has concluded their testimony, please remember to mute your microphone. In the case of a panel testimony, questions from the committee will be asked at the end of all testifiers on the panel. Once individuals or panels are done testifying, please exit the Teams call and watch from the live stream on the legislature's website. If testifiers cannot wait until they are called upon, we encourage them to submit written testimony so the committee can consider their positions. Time for questions from the committee. During testimony, members appearing virtually who wish to ask questions should ask to be recognized by using the raise hand feature on Teams. During testimony, members appearing virtually who wish to ask should ask to be recognized by using the raise hand feature on Teams. The order of questioning will be the presiding chair, the co-chair, and then any members that have asked to be recognized to ask a question, beginning with members appearing in person and then members appearing virtually. When finished questioning virtually, the member who has asked the question should let me know that they have no further questions and then promptly remute their mic. And we're now moving on to the bills. We are calling, Senator Timilty. Is he here yet? Actually, I see in person in the audience, Senator Lewis is here. Oh, okay. Representative. Representative.
Remotely, yeah. Yes, and we have a third person joining remotely as well, Julie Thompson.
Okay. Representative.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for taking us out of order. We really appreciate this, and we appreciate the committee's time on hearing this bill. This is Bill H-74. It's an act to modernize funding for community media programming. As we all know, cable TV fees are used to pay for our local access stations, TV stations. And as you all know, cable TV subscriptions are diminishing, and they have been over the last several years. But the other thing that we know is that during COVID, the majority of our access TV programming helped keep government running and help keep citizens involved in what was happening in government, because we couldn't leave our houses, but at least they could televise meetings, go out in the park, do some things to get us more engaged. So with the funding diminishing because the cable subscriptions are diminishing, last couple of years about 10 to 15% is what it's going down, and even more. We proposed a fee, a 5% fee for streaming services such as Netflix, Hulu, etc. This bill is filed in conjunction with Rep. Machino and myself, and Senator Lewis as well. And we really like to see that we think this is the time actually that we really need to start changing the process. And we could talk about the dynamics, how to actually do that, but we really need to start getting this bill through this committee if we can, and then start the process of how we actually go about the fees and how that's going to work. Because we've had some conversations with you, Madam Chair, with regards to we don't want to charge more than what's happening right now. We don't want more fees than what's happening now, but we need fees to actually keep these local cable access companies going, and it helps the municipalities as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Senator Lewis, and then we'll have our own Executive Director of PAC TV and Plymouth speak as well to wrap it up.
Chair Moore and Chair Foley-Bouvier and honorable members of the committee, thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to be with you today in person because alongside Rep. Muratori and Rep. Machino, this is really one of my top priorities this legislative session. we all love our local community media cable access stations. A lot of us do TV shows and do podcasts, and they are, instrumental to keeping our constituents informed as to what's happening with local government, local sports, and community activities. And they face an existential crisis. So I pulled the numbers for my own district, and this is what's happened to cable subscribers in these communities since 2016. So just prior to the pandemic. In the city of Malden, the number of cable subscribers is down 48%. So almost half of their cable subscribers have cut the cord. In Melrose, down 33%. Reading, down 24%. Stoneham, down 25%. Wakefield, 27%. And my hometown of Winchester, almost 30%. So these are dramatic declines in the number of people who are subscribing to cable. That's the funding source that pays for the staff and the programming and the equipment in our local community media. It's cable subscription fees. That's why we really need to take action, and hopefully soon. This bill proposes an alternative, which is a fairly modest 5% fee that would be assessed on streaming services. It would be collected at the state level just to simplify the process so each municipality doesn't have to negotiate a separate contract like they do with cable providers today. We think that would be a lot smoother and more streamlined. And then the money would get distributed back to the municipalities to fund local community media. So hopefully the committee will agree with us that this is a critical issue we need to address sooner rather than later. We're certainly open to working with you on exactly the structure of the fee and how that works. And whether that's, really the best way to provide an alternative funding stream. We think it is, but we're open to conversations. And we've been working very closely with Mass Access, and you're going to hear from one of the members soon. And this is obviously, again, they're very focused on this issue, and we hope we can work together on it this session. Before I step away, I just wanted to mention there's another bill that you have on your docket today that I sponsored. So the one we just spoke about was Senate Bill 34. And that's the same as the bill that Rep. Muratori spoke about. But I also have Senate Bill 33 on your agenda today, which is in the area of artificial intelligence, a hot topic, right, that we're all talking about now. And it focuses specifically on the issue of using automated algorithms by state agencies to make decisions. And one of the concerns that we have about this is disparate and discriminatory impacts on different subgroups in the population that are often baked into, unintentionally, but baked into these kind of algorithms that many increasingly private sector and government agencies are using to make decisions. So the bill would simply create a commission that would be charged with looking at the use of automated decision-making AI across different state agencies, what rules and practices they have in place to ensure transparency, to ensure that those considerations around disparate impacts on different populations have been considered, what sort of appeals process there would be, and so forth. So hopefully, as you're thinking about AI and our response in general, and thank you, Senator Feingold, for your leadership also on this issue, this is one particular area I hope we'll also take a look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Julie?
Yes, we have Julie Thompson, who's the Executive Director of PAC TV in Plymouth.
Thank you. You got me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Community action through media. It's our tagline and our mission. Unlike the early days of access television programming, today we span the gamut, from municipalities and schools, nonprofits and entrepreneurs, artists and musicians, libraries and councils on aging. There's no population we don't support and lift up. We bring hyper-local content that is non-commercial and non-biased and geared towards our residents, businesses, and consumers. We're devoted to telling stories about the people who are the fabric of our region. During the pandemic, we were often the only source of updates from our governments, health departments, social service providers, and senior centers. Every day, we broadcast live at noon to keep our community connected and our residents informed. It was our job, but joy. We've been fortunate over 25 years to be funded by a small percentage of cable television revenues, which were mandated by the Cable Act of 1984. Since then, technology and societal changes have drastically affected the way people consume their content. Cord cutting is exponentially increasing and thus our funding decreasing. We have known about this for years and have worked to raise funds in other ways, including our services for pay. Unfortunately, that alone cannot replace the dollars needed to continue the good and essential work we do and the services we provide. Cable companies have been mandated to support the communities where their customers live and work, providing funding necessary for public education and government programming. The streaming services should do the same. With the demise of local newspapers and the questionable fact-checking of many social media sites, providing a local trusted source for news and information is our continued mission and our goal. We're being asked to cover more and more meetings, which were once just in person and now have a remote component for participation. Everyone wants transparency in government. Transparency costs money to provide. Nonprofits who greatly benefit from our public service announcements and stories about them and their work need our services more than ever. We teach, train, and support community members to make their own content and tell their own stories. Just in the last 18 months, we have covered and archived more than 966 board and committee meetings representing thousands of hours of live and video-on-demand viewing and have produced and shared more than 900 informational stories, profile pieces, sporting events, concerts, parades, community events, and fundraisers through our award-winning weekly news program. Our news shines a light on the local faces, spaces, and events that make our community special when we highlight what's good and good to know. We've won industry awards for our profiles, our documentaries, and our podcasts. We continue to integrate closed captioning services into our content. And we successfully produced the first ever hybrid representative town meeting in Plymouth just this past April. We're not just community media, we are community connectors. Please help us continue this good and valued service. Support House Bill 74 and Senate Bill 34. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Julie. Before we begin questioning, I know Rep. Moschino is
Bill sponsor.
this the bill sponsor. So if you want to make a statement.
Microphones in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to thank my House and Senate colleague for their testimony and for TV and all of their work. I would just make the observation as one of the bill authors that Massachusetts has a unique and thriving ecosphere of community media and local programming. And to all of my colleagues' excellent points and their fine testimony, really what this bill is doing is updating our existing laws to keep pace with the technology changes that people are using to access news and local programming, but also to enjoy entertainment. And so really, most simply stated, this is about keeping pace with the way that people are evolving and the technology as it is evolving. And as you've heard from TV, and you will hear from Mass Access and as well as their elected officials, it's worthy, it's necessary, and it's timely. So I thank you for all of your consideration, and I thank my colleagues for doing all the heavy lifting while I'm on the committee listening.
Thank you. The first question I have is, what factors came into choosing the specific number of 5%? Why that number?
Okay, I can answer that question.
Yeah.
It should have just come around. It's to be consistent with the existing cable franchise agreements. 5%.
Okay.
But if I may add,
Go ahead.
Senator, we're not looking to charge each one of them 5%. But like I stated earlier, it should be the fee that they're getting now. It should be somehow worked into how that fee actually happens for the total of them.
Yeah, so the idea is to replace the lost revenue, not to sort of create a whole new revenue stream. I mean, that would be probably great if I'm sure they're happy to take more, but this is really just replace what's been lost. So that's just a calculation of 5% would raise, I forget the exact dollar number, but that amount would essentially replace what's being lost.
Okay. How can we account for users of the multiple separate streaming services? we will see the subscriptions covering the tax multiple instances.
So the way that the bill proposes to do it is different than the way we currently do it through our existing cable agreements, where we do it town by town. Instead, what we're doing is saying, what is your revenue in the state, to try to simplify it and also to avoid complications for bundling multiple services, different things. So it's really about what's the revenue. You report it, it comes in through the state, and it gets distributed on a per person basis, per capita basis, to each city and town.
Okay, thank you. Why is only 40% of the collected money distributed to the community media, and the remaining 60% goes back to the general fund of the local municipal governments?
So the way that we've done this is trying to keep it in commensurate with each of the various actors' responsibilities. So money coming into the state because they have to do the reporting and the oversight and the distribution, money coming into the municipality because ultimately that is where the responsibility lends. But there are many models, and I would defer to Dave Gauthier of Mass Access can discuss it in more detail. But there are many models, and so we were trying to think of a way to do it simply to make sure that the money was coming in into the municipality through to the media center, both for the investments that are needed in the capital, but also for the programming, to make sure it reaches the programming. Using my district as an example, Hull has a department and all the money comes in through there, and it's a town employee. Using Hingham and Harbor Media as the other example, Hingham actually has a department, but then they contract out through Harbor Media to do that work. And so we're trying to honor all of the different models that have come up and been developed over time. And certainly we can have that conversation with the committee. But that was, we were trying to keep it simple and to not disrupt the existing ecosystem that's out there, and to make sure that money's coming in and there's a nexus between what we're asking the fee for and it actually reaching for the important public purpose of public programming.
And Mr. Chairman, just realize this, but that's what happens now. It goes to municipalities, and then they give it out to the access stations.
Okay. Is a state or local streaming services tax preempted by a federal law, specifically the FCC's August 2nd, 2019 order restricting local government franchise fees on any services?
We don't believe so, but that's a great question also to ask when Mass Access testifies, because they've done the legal analysis on this. That's a good question to ask.
All right, thank you.
But we don't believe that would be preempted.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman.
Thank you so much, Senator and Representative. We've heard about this bill pretty much more than any other bill in the committee. And I'll just say from the outset that I agree with you on the goals of this bill. I think preserving the work of community access television is extremely important, especially with, you might call it the collapse of local news. And I think local news is key to democracy. And so saving community access is about saving democracy. So with that, I think we still have a lot of work to do on the numbers and how we're going to do it. So how we get there seems really unclear to me right now, but we share the goal.
Do we have any questions for committee members?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Moratori, Senator Lewis. It's very valuable. In my district, like in every other district, the local news put out by conglomerate, and I think it has one report, and their coverage is shaky. They try hard, well intended, and we have local access cable every committee meeting, city council meeting, annual event, and you're doing.
Representative Turco.
Thank you, Chairman, Madam Chairman. A couple of questions for the panel. How much revenue do you anticipate would be realized annually under this proposal at 5%?
About 65 million.
65 million. Okay. And I think I heard you say the distribution formula would be per capita, not really. So it would be untethered to the actual use by community? I guess my question is, so let's say the city of Boston has 200,000 people that are using streaming service, and the town of Wellesley has 0. Would Wellesley still get money because it's distributed on a per capita basis, and so they would be effectively taking money from Boston to give to Wellesley?
So I assure you that's not the actual case, but yes.
Yes, in theory, yes.
Okay. And do we have any idea what the administrative cost would be of having a state agency collecting 65 million, putting in place a formula that would then distribute it to the local communities?
They do it now. That is the way it comes in. All of the money is collected through the state and then distributed.
No, any idea what are we talking about 10%, 20% would be cut off the top for administrative, if we know? Okay. I mean, I'll say, I think we all agree on the benefits of community access. We have Marie there and Winthrop are wonderful. But I will say I have a concern that a lot of the people in my communities have left cable because the exorbitant charges, the lack of quality programming, and they've gone to streaming services in part to save money because they're paying $6 a dozen for eggs right now because of inflation. And now we're going to turn around and say, well, good job finding a more efficient service that works for your budget, but we're going to tack you on a 5% tax. And so I'm a little concerned about if it's $65 million and it's a priority, which I think it is for everyone here. I don't know why we just don't do a direct appropriation from the Commonwealth out of the billions of dollars a year. We're generating the largest revenue ever for the Commonwealth. Why we're not using $65 million to distribute it that way instead of taxing the working class people of the Commonwealth. So that's my concern. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next we have a virtual testimony from Shelby Marshall and Peter Marchette. It's virtual. She's turning on now.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Shelby.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the Joint Committee for its consideration of House Bill 74 and Senate Bill 34, an act to modernize funding for community media programming. It is an honor to speak before this committee on behalf of the town of Westboro and in support of this bill. My name is Shelby Marshall. I am a member of the Westboro Select Board, a member of the Cable TV Advisory Committee, and host of several shows produced by Westboro TV, one of which proudly features your own Senator Moore as a regular guest. Local access stations throughout Massachusetts are facing the unenviable equation of increased demand for services and declining revenue due to the shift from traditional cable access to streaming services. Cable subscriptions are the revenue mechanism for local access media. In Westboro, the number of cable subscribers has dropped more than 35%. Conversely, Westboro TV has experienced a 25% increase in YouTube subscribers just from 2021 to 2022. Local access stations deliver essential content across a broad spectrum to residents. In 2022, Westboro TV produced 686 shows across all 3 channels, public, education, and government, for a total of over 20,000 hours, an equivalent of 835 days of programming. This content was diverse. It includes critical, fact-based, unbiased coverage of municipal government meetings that create uniform accessibility across the community and which increase public engagement and transparency. Marketing content to support local businesses and to assist the town's economic development committee and department to attract new businesses, to assist existing local businesses to grow and to stay in Westboro, thus keeping the tax revenue, which is essential, and to maintaining a balance in the tax base. Coverage also included religious services, community celebrations such as Memorial Day and Veterans Day, civic-sponsored events, fine arts performances, athletic events, just to name a few. This programming provides essentially needed social connectivity to all residents, regardless of demographic identity. During the pandemic, local access media provided and continues to provide essential technical knowledge and skills that make complex hybrid meetings run effectively and to promote accessibility. This bill proposed follows Massachusetts' current model of cable franchisees by imposing the 5% fee as discussed on providers that are using public rights of way and digital infrastructure to sell and deliver services to our residents. Several states have already passed similar laws. The proposed legislation is aligned with Massachusetts' longstanding support of community media. It brings additional revenue to the state's general fund and local aid and keeps the Commonwealth current with current technology. Funding for local access is critical. Municipalities and communities depend on it. Without necessary funding, stations such as Westboro TV will be required to significantly decrease its coverage to the detriment of the efficient and effective operation of local government and whole communities. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide this testimony to the Joint Committee.
Thank you, Peter.
I believe Peter is not able to attend and will provide some written testimony.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you very much. Hold on. Any questions for Professor? Thank you very much. Next, we have a panel, Jonathan Grabowski and David.
Thank you very much, Chair Moore and Chair Farley-Bouvier. My name is Jonathan Grabowski, and I'm the Executive Director of Marshfield Community Media and a clerk of the Board of Mass Access and a member of their legislative subcommittee. We're here to talk about H74 and S34. Mass Access is a membership-based nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for community media centers across the Commonwealth. We do this through education, networking, and legislative advocacy, which brings us as to why we're here today. Massachusetts has the highest concentration of community media centers across the country. These media centers are essential to the communities they serve. They provide training, equipment, and facilities. They support open and transparent government, and most importantly, connect the communities they serve by providing a window into it through various forms of content. As part of the Cable Communications Policy Act of 1984, community media centers set up by local governments are entitled to up to 5% of gross annual revenue of cable providers operating in their communities. Let me stress this is solely cable revenue, not revenue from internet, not revenue from phone services. In Massachusetts, cable franchise fees are negotiated locally. Community media centers depend on these funds for over 90% of their operating budgets. The troubling trend in decline is the cable subscribers, which directly affects the amount of funding coming to community media centers from franchise fees. The number of cable subscribers in the Commonwealth has decreased dramatically since 2015, with an average of 96,000 homes per year deciding to abandon subscribing to cable. According to numbers provided by the Massachusetts Department of Telecommunications and Cable, the total number of households subscribing to cable television dropped 10% from the end of 2021 to the end of 2022. This reduction represents the largest single-year loss subscribers since the data first became public. Overall, cable subscriptions in Massachusetts have decreased from approximately 2.2 million at the apex of 2013 to 1.5 million at the end of 2022, a loss of 31% overall. This isn't tied to a region or demographic. For example, according to subscriber numbers provided by DTC, between 2015 and 2022, Pittsfield saw a 35% loss, Worcester saw a 38% loss, Foxborough 25%, and Cambridge 52%. In 2022, the estimated combined total of franchise fees that support community media centers in Massachusetts was $63.3 million. And based on the current rate and subscriber losses, that figure will be $31 million by 2030. There's also the economic impact. This reduction in funding will force community media centers to eliminate positions, forcing highly skilled professionals into unemployment. This also trickles down to the countless vendors community media centers work with, impacting the livelihood of those companies and their employees. The bill before you today will allow for community media centers across the Commonwealth to continue in their mission in connecting the community through media. In an age of remote participation and the lack of local media coverage, community media centers in Massachusetts have found themselves in the untenable situation of facing increased demand for services with less funding. A 2023 survey of MassAccess members reports that 71% of member organizations cite increased coverage of municipal meetings since 2020, and 59% report decreased funding in that same time frame. If you want to protect this industry, we ask that you support this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And with that, I'll turn over to the President of MassAccess and the Executive Director of Winchester Access and Media, Mr. Dave Gauthier.
Thanks, Jonathan. And thank you all for the opportunity to testify here today. I've had the privilege of testifying for Massachusetts community media quite a few times now. And if I'm here in another couple of years outlining the same issues to a different joint committee, I'm going to be outlining closures and layoffs. I need to be clear when I say that no amount of alternative revenue generation or fundraising will sustain community media in Massachusetts the way it currently exists. So we are going to need legislative action to change our funding model, or we will cease to be. According to data provided by the Alliance for Community Media, there are 206 community media outlets here across the Commonwealth. That's 13% of all the community media centers in the country. There are 2 states that have more than 100. Those are Texas and California, states with 4 to 5 times the population of Massachusetts. If you're looking for a land area comparison, the closest is New Jersey, which has 44 community media stations. If you're looking for a population comparison, the closest is Tennessee. They have 25. The point of all of this is that no other state has ever embraced the doctrines of public access the way Massachusetts has. And therefore, Massachusetts has the most to lose when it comes to this industry. If it's to have a future, it needs to start right here. And we can't base decisions based on what other states are doing because no one does it like we do here. If you haven't already, you're going to hear from opponents of this bill that will tell you that this bill places an undue financial burden on the residents of Massachusetts. Well, I would say that, first of all, this is an assessment placed on streaming entertainment companies. If they choose to defer that cost back to their customers, it is they who are placing the burden, not the state. And secondly, if community media funding continues to dry up the way it is, the cost of covering all of these meetings and local events is going to fall to the municipalities, which is going to result in higher taxes for residents. And those, unlike streaming entertainment platforms, are not optional. Sorry. Operating mostly behind the scenes for several decades, community media has become part of the fabric of life here in Massachusetts. It's undervalued. It's often criticized and put in a category as irrelevant. Yet every day, hundreds of community media professionals and thousands of volunteers are performing vital tasks that most residents in the Commonwealth take for granted. We can't suddenly go backward on all those services, right? What good are advances in technology if they result in a lower quality of life? We've seen this act play out with print media. And we're going to go in the same direction if we continue down this. I ask that you act favorably on these bills, and I ask that you do it soon, because running out of time on another legislative session is likely going to mean running out of time on something that is really unique and a great part of life here in Massachusetts. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. One question I asked earlier that was deferred to you is the state or local streaming services tax preempted by federal law, specifically the FCC's August 2nd, 2019 order restricting local government franchise fees on any services, e.g. the internet, that are provided over cable.
I'm happy to provide the legal opinion of a national telecom lawyer that we got last year saying that no, there are no federal preemptions. Massachusetts can do whatever they want.
Would this legislation allow for an in-kind contribution by the cable provider?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, it says 5% rather than actually the revenue money coming in would allow for an in-kind donation. In-kind.
Certainly.
Do we have any questions from the?
Mr. Chairman?
Good. Senator Fowler.
Thank you. I still get a newspaper. I still carry cash. I still have cable TV. My kids have none of that. I guess my question for you is 10 years from now, I'm not convinced cable TV's around. So how do we deal with this? Because I'm with you. I think you need to know about your local town media. But if no one has cable 10 years from now, what gives?
Well, Senator, I would say that this is exactly what we're trying to get out in front of. Right.
But I guess my question is that it's really, to me, it's a problem with the pipes where if everybody has streaming and there's no connectivity for access, because, I mean, are you on YouTube TV? Are you on Raku? Like, I mean, is that a part of it? I mean, are you like.
Most community media centers in Massachusetts stream their content live on the internet or have some sort of on-demand system. And I would say that.
But do they have an agreement with those providers?
No.
So isn't that the issue then?
Do you mean internet service providers?
Yeah, I mean, like.
Well, there are federal exclusions to faxing the internet, so no.
But I guess the question is that if people are not seeing you, how are they going to find you? And you're saying that you're just going to go online, but they're not part of any streaming service right now.
No, but most of us will have YouTube channels that people can access, and we're putting content on our own websites. And if you're looking for something in your particular district, you can go to those certain websites and look for that.
Okay.
And those streaming services are more than welcome to pick up our signals and provide those to residents if they'd like.
If I could, you don't care where the money comes from. You just want the money, right? You don't care if the Commonwealth were to do a direct appropriation towards a fund like this versus, hitting the working class. I mean, it's nice to say this is a tax on the streaming companies, but that's like saying the gas tax is a tax on the gas companies. I mean, it's the consumer that pays the tax. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we're talking about a tax on the working class that have elected to leave cable because the service stinks and it's too expensive, and they've gone to something that's more efficient, more cost effective, and we're saying, we're going to take that away from you. We're going to make you pay more to pay for the bad cable guys. So do you care if the money comes? Because again, I don't think there's one person here in this whole room, even if we polled the audience, that doesn't believe in the great work that these local, Winthrop Community Access is phenomenal. The question is, where's the money come from? I mean, to me, I think we ought to demonstrate as a Commonwealth that we value this enterprise, and we ought to put money towards it directly rather than hitting our voters again.
Well, I'd say in the last couple of years we've tried. You can ask one of my colleagues here, Ms. Bisbee from Brookline, has worked with her state representative, have a budget byline put in there. Both times voted out. And are we going to go every single year and look for money every single year when the budget gets tight? What's one of the things that's going to go? Something like this. We're looking to create some sort of sustainable future for our industry, or we can't grow. We can't go year to year. It won't happen. No one's going to want to work for this industry. No one's going to want to be part of it. And like I said, it's going to fall to the municipalities. So residents are going to pay one way or another. They're going to pay as part of their subscription, or they're going to pay in their local taxes. Because I don't think we can go backward. I don't think we can stop providing all of the coverage that we do now. I just don't see it. It would be a shame.
All right, Representative.
Oh, no, Mr. Gauthier said it. The goal here is sustainable revenues, and a sustainable revenue source. And we look forward to, we've already initiated a dialogue with House Chair. We look forward to continuing the conversation with the committee and figuring out what's a great next step forward that supports the amazing work that Mass Access and all of its members do.
Thank you. Actually, one quick question for you, because I know there's some communities, central part of the state, that some of the providers that are providing service aren't negotiating contracts. Have you heard complaints?
Yeah. Well, there are certain ones. I would say that because of the way, and Jonathan outlined this, the federal legislation is all written under that term, cable. So those companies have been trying to shake that term for many years. You've heard Verizon say, well, it's not cable. It's Fios, right? It's something different. That's why the term cord cutting is a misnomer. The cord remains. The cord's still there. It's just different data coming in. The path is still the same. That use of the right of way is still there. Yet they don't pay a thing. Why is that?
Okay, but is the information receiving that there are some providers that, or service providers that are not negotiating?
They would like to get out of the business of cable and go straight to a newer technology, and not having to pay for a community media outlet is probably one of the reasons they'd like to not do that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question, Chair?
Very much. Thank you very much for your testimony and for your work every day.
Sure.
Can you talk to me about the dollars? Like, how is this going to add up? And I'm going to get really basic on you. It used to be, 15 years ago, 5% of my cable was there. Now I have Netflix, Hulu, maybe a few too many, Paramount, but now it's going to be 5%, 5%, 5%. And how is that actually retaining revenue and not like overdoing this?
Yeah. We've heard this too, and it makes sense. We can only guess at what those numbers are. We can do the best we can with the data that we're able to access. And as Rep. Moschino said earlier, or maybe it was Senator Lewis, we're looking at this, and our estimations end up that it's not going to be a windfall for municipalities or for community media. It's going to make up for the loss of revenue that we're seeing due to subscriptions to cable going away. And I would say to those companies who tell you that this is going to be a huge windfall of cash, let them open their books and tell us how much they're pulling out of this on an annual basis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. Pleasure to be here. I realized that I started this role with TechNet in August of 2020. So this is the first time I'm actually having the pleasure of being in person to testify to you. So thank you for the opportunity. TechNet is a industry organization representing 99, soon to be more, of the most innovative companies in the country. Ranging from startups to some of the largest global brands in a number of different verticals throughout the innovation ecosystem. I'm here today to express our opposition to H74 and S34. Beyond being an ill-timed burden on your constituents, this new tax would be duplicative and administratively cumbersome, as well as sending a negative message to innovators and early adopters. Consumers who have cable already pay the fee, as you've heard, which is passed from the providers to the municipalities to the public access groups. So under this new regime, Massachusetts residents who have both a cable subscription and streaming services would be paying multiple times for the same service, while those who have cut the cord and use streaming services exclusively would be paying a fee, or more likely multiple fees, for a service that they do not have direct access to. The bill specifically levies the tax on services delivered over public rights of way, which would appear to capture entertainment accessed via a wired internet connection, but not over mobile networks. There's no way that I'm aware of for the streaming providers to or the tax enforcement agencies like DOR to determine how content is accessed and making this a compliance and enforcement nightmare. Further, the tax is levied exclusively on streaming content, while digital downloads are not taxed. Many streamers platforms already offer the option to download content, so this further murkies the waters of how this would be applied. Further, applying a fee on products and services accessed digitally, depending on how they're accessed, may run afoul of the federal Internet Tax Freedom Act. We ask that the committee not advance these bills and appreciate your time. With my remaining time, I do want to express our support for S26. We have extensive policy principles on IT modernization, which I've outlined in written testimony, but I want to offer the expertise of our members as you address IT modernization. It is a public good on its own, and it is part and parcel of the cybersecurity goals that you have as a committee. So we'd love to be a part of those discussions as you move forward on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Peter Padula. It's virtual.
Hello, hi. My name is Pete Padula. I am the executive director from Chelmsford Telemedia in the town of Chelmsford, and I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 74 and Senate 34. I know most of what you've heard today is I'm going to cut my testimony a little bit short because you've heard a lot.
Peter, excuse me, don't be offended. The House just had a roll call, so that's why you're seeing the House members get up and leave. They have to do a vote. So
no problem. You want me to keep going though, right?
Yeah, keep going. This is being recorded, so they'll be able to see the testimony.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for pointing that out. And I am going to cut my testimony a little bit short because my great colleagues from Mass Access, as well as Julie from Plymouth and Shelley from Westboro, really stated the case about why we support this bill as a community, as an industry that serves all these towns in Massachusetts. So what I'm just going to do real quick is give you just a small data point, which is just really a story that happened to me personally on the morning of July 4th. Our station received a call from a woman looking for the channel numbers. How can I help my 93-year-old neighbor watch the parade? She can't get out of the house to watch the parade. She really wants to watch the parade. We do provide live coverage. So that's not really a broad data point, but that's a really human story about one of the things that we do that just really helps bring the communities together that really can't be done in any other way. You already know about I could tell you about the 240 hours of government meetings that we do. I'm joining this meeting remotely. You know how I think all of our community access centers have helped bring participation in government through the pandemic and into where we are now. So I don't need to explain how that goes away if we go away, or an alternative source of funding has to be found. But these small stories are really, they're not as flashy, but I mean, they happen every week. They've been happening every week, every month for the 22 years I've been at Chelmsford Telemedia. And I don't think they can be discounted easily. So, much like my colleagues have said, we're being asked to do more with less. And as director, what I'm doing is I'm watching the clock. I've lost 18% in funding since 2018. I now have $140,000 less a year. I'm guessing. When do I cut staff? When do I cut services? When do I close up shop? Is it 2 years from now? Is it 3 years from now? Is it 5? Is it 1 year? I mean, we don't really know. So I just really want to reiterate David Gauthier's urgency. We are really staring down the barrel of the gun here. Every quarter, I lose money. And so at some point, like I said, this thing that binds us together can go away. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you can support this streaming bill to at least help mitigate the loss. Thank you.
So there's no committee members to ask about questions. So thank you. And now going to Jeff Levering. He's in person.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Levering. I'm the co-chair. I'm not a co-chair. I am the chair of the Cable Television Advisory Committee for the City of Worcester. And I've got a page and a half here written that you heard over and over today. We're supporting. I better get my glasses on to make sure I get the right numbers. House 74, S34. The City of Worcester has experienced the same problem. We've heard over and over again. We've had a 40% drop in our television cable subscribers over the last 10 years. We had a 20% drop in our franchise fee revenue. And our committee did a survey at the end of last year where half of the remaining subscribers for television are expecting to drop their subscriptions. So we are reiterating what the last speaker said. We're having a difficult time figuring out how we're going to financially continue to support public access. In Worcester, being a larger city, I'm not sure the case across the state, we actually have 3 different teams. We have a public access team, which is not part of the city. We have a government channel. We have an education channel. Each of those channels are staffed separately. And the franchise fees have been the primary funding source for us up to this point. And so we're very much in favor of this legislation. We think the streaming companies are obviously the ones that are benefiting from the transition away from traditional TV. They're using, in many cases, the rights of way that are being provided by cities like Worcester for cable television. They're using it for a different purpose and gaining the benefit of those licenses. So, again, we strongly support, and I thank you very much for your time. I'll provide this document separately after the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. There's 6 more individuals. Well, actually, the next 6 are all testifying in relative to House 74 and Senate 34. We've already received a lot of in-depth testimony on that. If there's issues that we've already covered, please feel free that you can submit the testimony in writing. But next is Alexander Lamarche. It is virtual.
All right. Good afternoon, esteemed members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity for you to speak. My name is Alex Lamarche, and I am the director of Hadley Media, who is a municipal department of the town of Hadley. And I'd like to give a unique perspective from a small Western Mass station. And I'd like to, and I am in favor of 74 and 34. Despite the commercialization of Route 9 that makes Hadley seem like a big city, we serve a small community of 5,270 people with 2,256 households in the town. Out of all of these households, only 54% of households are actually hooked up to cable. This means only 1,228 of all households in Hadley are hooked up to cable. And that is not a lot compared to many of our neighboring towns and cities. Even though we have received an increase of franchise revenue this year, our subscribership will still continue to trend down based on historical revenue increases, meaning that we will soon return to reduction in franchise revenue each year. As a municipality, we are restricted in how we can bring in outside revenue, unlike our nonprofit members. It could mean grave danger, financial danger for the department. And as mentioned, it could mean either higher taxes or closure of the department. This current model of funding our municipal centers and nonprofit centers is absolutely obsolete at this rate. In order to further our survival in our mission and not compete with other town budgets who are also struggling, it is crucial that H74 and S34 gets passed so that we can continue our work to serve the community that we enjoy serving. Like the grandmother who living in our local housing authority and due to mobility constraints cannot attend the baseball games. The only way she can see her grandson play baseball at Hopkins Academy is through Hadley Media. And a couple points I'd like to point out from some of the conversation earlier, yes, 5% will be passed down to consumer, but I've done the math. 5% of $15 is only 75 cents. And even though the numbers of subscribers streaming services may vary from community to community, however, all walks of life use the service, whether or not they are using cable streaming services, both, or just the internet, especially our low-income folks who still want to participate in their community. To wrap up, thank you for your time, and I hope you consider the passage of H74 and S34 so that all community media centers will continue to serve their communities. Written testimony will be submitted with our local data.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Damon Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. My name is, thank you, Chair Moore and Chair Farley-Bouvier and members of the committee. My name is Damon Stewart. I'm with the law firm Orrick. I'm here on behalf of Dish Network and DirecTV and their tens of thousands of subscribers here in the state. I recognize your point about a lot has been said and it's been a long hearing. I do want to try to maybe just cover a couple things that may spur some questions or some additional thoughts instead of rehashing old ground. Just a couple things to emphasize. This concept, this phrase use of the right of way has always historically meant physical occupation of the right of way. That is cable lines that provide the internet and provide this physical service. They don't own the property. They have to pay a franchise fee to get the legal right to access the property. For that, they get legal rights in return. Streaming companies don't own cable lines. They don't control cable lines. They have no right to access cable lines. In fact, their services, but just one, if you think about it, the internet literally has, of course, billions of data, billions of bits, and internet services are just one small piece of that. Yet they're asked to bear the burden of this other service, which, and there was, I want to get to that in a minute, but some understandable, not inappropriate, but I thought different from the original rationale in terms of this was needed to save jobs as opposed to providing accurate information to the community. And I think that might be a thought worth thinking about. This state, so if you had this streaming tax imposed, I will remind the members, or perhaps they would be unaware, it was years ago, but the state already passed on the satellite companies a 5% tax that was a franchise fee equivalent. So it would be that tax. There would be this tax on top of it. And on top of that, the federal government has mandated that the satellite companies set aside 4% of their spectrum to provide peg-leg programming, understanding that satellite companies don't have the technological capacity to provide the video service for every single city and town hall across the country that would require millions of satellites. So understand those are they should still do something. Satellite companies have always had their fair share as mandated by the feds. That's 4% spectrum they could be using for other valuable commercial resources. In the end, and this has been mentioned, I don't know if it was emphasized. In the end, again, people will be paying 2, 3, 4, 5 times for every single service they have. Last, I thought it was an interesting point. Instead of, I think Representative Turco brought it up, instead of changing state policy and adding new taxes, perhaps we investigate with $65 million, I think was the number bandied about, a general fund appropriation on that. And if I may, 2 more points. Second, if I were to come to this committee and say I would like you to impose a new tax on all your constituents, I expect that I would be grilled on exactly why. It would be nice to see, are these for jobs? Are these for equipment? I mean, what is this money to be expended upon? At least I don't know. I haven't seen that. Third, and my final point, I know my time's over. This committee is a technology committee, perhaps also examining, are the current expenditures being used with modern technology? My cell phone can do the work of some of that studio equipment 30 years ago. My cell phone and a green screen. these same information, these same services that is correctly deemed very important and should be sustained, I believe it's possible to be maintained or even enhanced, but utilizing different ways of doing things, different equipment that may not require a change in state policy, a brand new set of taxes, all these new taxes on constituents. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Scott, council. Are you here?
Here in person. I want to thank the committee for having me. My name is Scott Council, and I'm a member of the board of directors of Bedford Community Access TV. And I'm speaking on the behalf of the board and of our cable access provider, Bedford TV, in support of bills H74 and S34. Our access station may be a small operation, but it plays a large role in the life and affairs of our town of Bedford, Mass. Like so many other access stations, as you've heard, we were instrumental in helping our town government transition to virtual meetings during the pandemic to keep our residents connected and informed during that time. And we continue to expand our efforts in this regard today, and I think that's going to be a paradigm that we'll continue to pursue and offer residents. We are to stream more meetings in addition to the 6 or 8 committees that we are covering along with our select board. We also partner with our local newspaper, which is now a virtual publication in the production of our local news program. And I think this is an idea that a lot of access stations are going to pursue and could be a real salve in helping the decline of local journalism, which is really being threatened. And I think our local access stations could really help fill that void going forward. We have a robust education program that we're all very proud of for our young people that we offer in tandem with our school department and our recreation department. We train them in communications technologies, and these young people turn around and help in a lot of our productions. They staff many of our sports programming, even help with our government meeting production, and many of them go on to work in the communications field. So this is like a great supplement to what normally our school department would offer, and is really a great thing to offer our young people. That especially in the age group for elementary school and secondary school, aside from sports, it's often hard to find things for people in those age brackets to do. And this is a great activity, and it's been very successful. And we've had a lot of success with it. Like many access stations, we are instrumental in covering the life and affairs of our town, our many events. We have a lot of historical events, ceremonies, meetings, and so forth. There's any other organization that would be in a position to cover the life of our town in the way we do. And I would just close by saying that, like many other access centers around the state, our funds are starting to decline. We've been holding our own for a while, but we see some serious declines in the years ahead. We are actively looking for other revenue sources, including possibly turning to our town taxpayers to help us with our budgets. But we would hope that you would move on these bills favorably and help supply us the lifeline that we need. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Nell Orgax, virtual.
Good afternoon. I am Nell Forgas, Legislative Specialist for the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. I would like to thank Chair Moore, Chair Farley-Bouvier, and the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the League and its 44 local leagues in support of H74 S34, an act to modernize funding for community media programming. The League believes that it is of the highest priority that we secure the funding future of our local community access stations, which, as Chair Farley-Bouvier noted, are vital to the health of our democracy. Your constituents rely on their local community access stations to stay informed and to participate in their local government, particularly as the members of this committee have acknowledged, given the disappearance of many local newspapers. No one, not even those who work in local government, can attend every meeting in person, especially given that meetings are often scheduled at the same time. Massachusetts municipalities rely on community access stations to broadcast, stream, record, and preserve town meetings, town forums, public hearings, and innumerable board, committee, subcommittee, commission, and council meetings for the public. Community access stations truly provide community access. Massachusetts students and teachers can access free live local civics from their classrooms without a cable subscription. Residents with limited income can access local government programs from a public library computer. Busy working parents can watch school committee meetings via video on demand while riding the commuter rail to and from work. In my town, a local journalist watches board and committee meetings via the internet and is able to publish his weekly newsletter about local government, all while traveling out of state for his day job. Your constituents also rely on the leagues of women voters around the state and their partnerships with their local community access stations. Together, we produce and make widely available programs that support an informed and active electorate. League programs consistently rank among the community access stations' highest watched video on demand programming. The League of Women Voters believes that democratic government depends upon the informed and active participation of its citizens at all levels of government, and that governmental bodies must protect the citizens' right to know. Community media programming is integral to achieving these goals, but as you heard from Mass Access today, will not survive unless the way in which we fund it is updated. The League of Women Voters of Massachusetts and our 44 local leagues serving over 100 communities from Cape Cod to the Berkshires urge you to report H74S34 swiftly and favorably out of committee to ensure adequate funding to support the survival of this vital community asset. This is an urgent and intelligent investment in the future of our democracy. We thank you again for the opportunity to testify today and for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Any other questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, another virtual is Sean Surrey. Virtual.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Farley Bouvier, Chair Moore, and honorable members of the Joint Committee. My name is Sean Sayre, and I'm Executive Director of Pittsfield Community Television. Thank you for this opportunity to give testimony in favor of House Bill 74, Senate Bill 34, an act to modernize funding for community media programming. By now, many of you are probably familiar with the importance of community media in the Commonwealth, so I won't use time talking about how community media centers around the state promote things like transparency in government, or getting information to vulnerable, immobile, and marginalized populations, or creating positive pathways for youth learning and activity, or covering important hyperlocal events that larger media organizations ignore. I'd like to talk about things closer to home here in the Berkshires. Pittsfield, the largest city in Berkshire County, Western Massachusetts, is actually in the Albany, New York DMA, which means we receive a large share of our news and information from another state. Many times our residents know more about current affairs in New York than here in our own state. We're sometimes known as the only county in the state to be bordered by 4 states, New York, Vermont, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. In all seriousness, Pittsfield Community TV plays a vital role providing information here in our community, as the television stations from Albany have removed their bureaus and reporters from the area and cover only the largest news events like disasters and murders. We're not a news desert, but we're headed in that direction. But there's more to the story. We know that there are important issues that deserve and demand local attention. The building blocks of democracy are the ordinary issues handled at the local level by the city council and the school committee, and the opportunity for local people to have a voice to speak out and redress grievances, and the easy availability for residents to access this programming. These are the things that Pittsfield Community TV has provided for 35 years in this border area, where residents face increasingly limited access to local information. The paradox is that in this information age, the consolidation of media, large news affiliate groups, cable companies, the big tech companies, and streamers offer no real freedom of expression or service at the local level. Sure, you can have a Facebook or YouTube account and become an influencer, but will people on these platforms commit to produce consistent, unbiased, gavel-to-gavel coverage of local meetings Will they train and provide support to our residents to create local programming? I don't see them stepping up any time to do this in the future. And more importantly, who will do this when, after many years of cable cord cutting, there is no longer cable funding to keep this vital service going? It would be a huge burden, especially on local governments here in Berkshire County, to shoulder that cost. PCTV has invested in technology that allows us to stream programming to viewers, to provide video on demand for new and archived programs, and to add closed captioning to programs for accessibility, all without the need for a cable subscription. Why incur this extra cost when the traditional model is simply to program 3 cable channels? We did this to get the programming to the widest local audience on platforms people are watching, while cable subscribers and funding are decreasing. And after all, the big tech streaming companies use the same wires in the same public rights of way to profit from their businesses, as do the cable companies. And they are increasingly converting traditional cable video services to these streaming-based services to avoid franchise fees. Right now, only the cable companies must compensate our local municipalities for this use, and the others do not. So it's clearly a case of fairness. I urge you to support the passage of this bill, which will modernize the funding model and give us the tools we need to continue our important local community resource and head off a crisis for democracy that doesn't need to happen. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Senator. And I just want to thank you, Sean, for the leadership that you have shown in Pittsfield. When you say unbiased, it's really true. There's certainly times that I'm like, really? Why can't you let me say that? But the rules are pretty strict, and there's reasons for it. And we say gavel to gavel coverage. I mean, of even the Conservation Commission gets gavel to gavel, gets gavel to gavel, and nobody does that. And again, with the collapse of local news, we are really dependent on community access television. And I'll just say one more thing. In the Berkshires, we do things a little differently than in the rest of the state. And one of those things is how we share content throughout the stations, through Berkshire County and throughout the state. And that really makes a difference. And certainly PCTV was a really integral part of our communication plan during COVID. So just really grateful for the work you do. And as I've said earlier today, we share the goal. We're looking together for the pathway to get there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And next, Scott Curlin. Been here for quite a while. See you sitting over there.
Yes, I have, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Sparley-Bouvier and Chair Moore. I will not read what I was going to write because you've heard it all before.
Thank you.
I will submit it. So what I wanted to say is, as you know, community access, I am, of course, speaking in favor of S34 and H74. One thing that was brought up today is the fact that it was being called a tax. This is not a tax. It is a fee. If things go the way they are, it would eventually become a tax. The fact of the matter is, community access stations do provide a lot of services that you know of. We also do a lot of training. We work with the colleges. We work with universities in Leominster alone. I should have said that I'm Scott Curlin, the Executive Director of Leominster Access Television. I work with Fitchburg State University. We train interns. We treat them like employees. They work a 40-hour-a-week job. They get on-the-job training. You're not going to get that from any other industry. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the fact that community access television isn't community access television anymore. We keep calling it community access media because what we have been doing for the last 15 years is transitioning with the trends into streaming. Most of us stream our channels 24 hours a day, all 3 channels. If you go to our websites or if you go to the Roku app, a lot of our stations are there. So the main thing that I wanted to say, and I wanted to leave you all with this, is the fact that I thank you all for your time. And one thing that is mentioned on one of the shows that we do in Leominster is our mayor signs off every week of his TV show with "The world is run by those who show up." And I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about it when I recently rewatched The West Wing, which I feel very ironic right now. It was paraphrased into "The world is changed by those who are willing to speak up." And I feel that today that David and Jonathan from Mass Access have done a wonderful job speaking up. Rep. Machino has done a wonderful job speaking up, and Senator Lewis has done a wonderful job of speaking up. And I hope that I too have done a wonderful job speaking up. I thank you for your time, and I thank the House Broadcast Services for all they do in getting us these meetings so that we can air them on our channels. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
No, just thank you. That was very kind words and very eloquent.
And you
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Nathan Glennie.
Good afternoon, Chairs Moore, Chairs Farley Bouvier, and honorable members of the committee. This is my first time testifying at the State House here, so again, appreciate your time today. My name is Nathan Glennie, and I represent Fitchburg Access Television as their executive director. I've been involved with this organization since I was in middle school, well over 20 years in various capacities. So it was really that educational foundation. It taught me the core functions of public access. That opportunity continues today. We also collaborate with Fitchburg State University, host a multi-camera course with them. Many of them have gone on to various forms of industry, whether it's film, television, but it's a great feeder program. So yes, I am here today to favorably speak upon these two pieces of legislation, and I would echo everybody's comments today. As suggested from one of my good friends, Representative Michael Krishmerik, I want to be cognizant of your time. It's been a long day for all of us. But what I would like to strongly convey today is that, community media centers are quickly becoming one of the only reliable sources for hyper-local programming. Our content feeds are not affected and distributed by metrics and analytics. Our technology, media, and facilities are accessible to all. We collectively offer one of the last forms of unbiased free speech. The stories and messages of gratitude from our viewers are endless. You've heard some of them today. I could tell you about a viral moment when a high school graduate donated $40,000 back to the school. That was a viral moment that went global. About the gentleman who mentioned the burden local access stations force upon satellite services, I'd ask any of my colleagues who work in this industry, have they ever received funding from them? No. So myself, along with everybody across the Commonwealth, we hope we can count on you with a favorable recommendation for this legislation. And again, I thank you for your time today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Quick question, if I could. Do you guys file Form 990s?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Thank you.
They are annual and they are available on the website.
Yes, I know where they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kathy Bisbee. And who do you have with you, Kathy?
What's that?
And who do you have with you?
I have with me the next person on your list, I hope, which is Tango Ochoa from Springfield and an intern at Brookline Interactive Group.
Thank you for coming today.
First of all, I just want to thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Chair. I'm the executive director at Brookline Interactive Group. My name is Kathy Bisbee. I'm also an alumni fellow of the MIT Open Documentary Lab. I've worked 13 years of my career for internet service providers, and I'm an international member of the XR Safety Initiative, the coalition that is worldwide looking for ways to protect our biometric data in virtual reality. I just give you that context because it's been a lovely afternoon with you all. You are dealing with all the issues that I care most deeply about. But the one that is closest to my heart is public access to the media and to broadband. I was in California for 13 years and as a community media director there. In 2006, the cable industry passed DIVCA, which was the Digital Video Infrastructure Act, and we lost immediately 50 community media centers shut down. They're just completely shut down in California. So I really saw firsthand what happens when those communities no longer have a voice in the media landscape. And that media landscape is no longer the public airwaves in the traditional sense. It is the public airwaves everywhere. And as my colleague in Pittsfield said, it's not just hardwired locations anymore. It's also that infrastructure that we have built as the public to build the internet. I mean, the internet started actually with public funds and it continues with public funds. Secondly, I just wanted to mention, and I'm also trying not to cover other ground here, you know, the cable companies often use this same argument that it's a tax. But the fact is the cable companies can decide if they want to take that money out of their CEO's salary or if they want to pass that on as a pass along fee to their customers. It's a cost of doing business. And I would argue that this bill also, page 74 and 34, I might make sure I mention, is also a cost of doing business. It's a way to modernize funding for community media, but this is also a cost that currently streaming providers aren't providing and the cable companies are to the public airwaves. It's a little bit like paying rent on the public airwaves and also paying rent on the internet for something that you're using that started with resources from the public good. Lastly, I just want to give you a really lovely picture and brag a little bit about Western Mass. I work in Brookline, but I live in Holyoke. We have a brand new community media center that just opened there. It was widely attended, the opening. But 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went to the New England Emmys, where my husband, Al Williams from Northampton Open Media, he's the executive director there, and his board member, high school teacher Jeremy Whalen, who won an Emmy. They beat out 4 television stations who have millions of dollars to create content, producing a 14 camera shoot, all by volunteers, all by high school interns that they created, edited, and then won an Emmy for. And I couldn't be more proud of them. But if you want to know where the money goes, that's where it's going. It's teaching young people how to use these tools. They're not using their phones for winning Emmys. They're using broadcast kind of equipment that we're teaching them how to fund. And I'll also leave with you a couple of things. And I've also given this to Rep. Machino as well. We have our in-report in Brookline and also just a one-pager that will tell you more about the work that we're doing on this issue. And I'll hand it over to Tanya.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate the time to speak as well. Just to give a little of a sense, I am a marketing and production intern for Brookline Interactive Group, and I work on a team of other interns where we've been granted access and the opportunity to do a variety of things, such as producing social media content, as well as going on location shoots throughout the town of Brookline, where we are able to document different events that are happening in the town. Recently, for example, I was given the opportunity to document the Juneteenth celebration that just happened, and being able to even have the resource to do something like that as someone who is currently a student who's working in this production and broadcast field is so crucial. And I'm realizing that a lot of this is only possible because of the work of these, quite frankly, these institutions that have been built over the years and shifted throughout many different mediums as we see media continue to evolve over the years. And it's incredibly important just for people who are growing up now to have that understanding of their town, of their surroundings, that is centralized and not as much a dependent on what they may intake from these different, social media platforms or streaming platforms where they are getting inundated with an abundance of content and an abundance of news from a variety of places. It's much more important for someone, especially if you're only getting a sense of that now, when you are only growing up, to really understand this is where I am, these are the people who I am around. It's very important for that to be as accessible as possible and as centralized as possible. Have a hub for that kind of thing. Have a place where you can get that kind of content. And as helpful as social media and streaming are to direct that to these places, it can't necessarily function as it's only the only source. It has to be centralized in a place that is as accessible as possible. And I think so far we've seen that these cable platforms have done more than a tremendous job at that. So I think that's the biggest thing so far. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hanging in today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, no, thank you. Jeff Henzel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Representative Mosquito. I'll cut short my remarks and just mention 2 brief points. I'm Jeff Henzel, Executive Director of the Belmont Media Center, and I've been there since 2006, so time flies. Before that, I ran Malden and then was in Colorado and Ohio. In response to a couple of points, our media center has increased services since the pandemic, and we've had to do so in the face of declining revenues, but we're determined to meet the demand of services in our community by being more efficient, by streamlining our organization, cutting overhead, and figuring out more efficient ways to deliver our services. But we're also reaching out to our partners in town, to nonprofit organizations to expand our services by partnering with those organizations. And that's been a really efficient way to expand our reach without expanding our cost. And we're proud of being able to do that. We do a lot of classes in elementary, middle school, and high school. We do 600 hours of community meetings every year, and we're a workforce training site for federal and state agencies with people trying to mainstream back into the workforce, either due to illness, injury, or disease. The 2 points I just wanted to mention are people talk about streaming providers and that phrase, cut the cord. Fact is, nobody's cutting any cords. Streaming providers are using the same nationwide infrastructure that's built on the public rights of way to send their services, to send all that great content to every home in America. And they're not paying the freight to do that. Look at it this way. Is that fair? You know, food trucks are very ubiquitous across the United States, and every food truck pays a fee to operate on the public rights of way. So if you look at it this way, if streaming providers were food trucks, they would be on every street corner of America and probably in my front yard selling sandwiches and not paying a dime for that. Is that really fair? I don't think so. Secondly, the question about whether or not streaming revenue, streaming fees will burden taxpayers. The fact is, history does not, those things aren't related. In the history of cable television, cable prices have never gone down. And year after year, cable providers chip away at the regulatory framework, and none of the money they save ever goes back in the pockets of cable subscribers. So whether you pass the bill, whether you don't pass the bill, streaming fees are likely to go up anyway. So I would urge you to support this bill and sustain community media centers now and in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, because it's like the 4th person or the 5th person said this isn't a tax or it's not going to affect the rate. I mean, you don't doubt that if Comcast or whoever, Comcast Online is assessed a 5% tax on their gross revenue, they're going to pass it on to the user. Do you? Do you really doubt that? You think they'll absorb it?
It's not germane to their business plan. Okay, that's my proven year after year. So whether you tax them or not, whether you put the streaming fee on, it has nothing to do whether or not they're going to raise the prices or not. It just becomes a talking point.
But the question is whether they raise their price $1 or $1.15 to make up for this tax.
Right.
Right. So either way, the tax, the 5% tax, which our bill summary calls it a 5% tax, doesn't call it anything else. It says a 5% tax imposes a 5% tax on gross receipts. So that tax is going to get passed on to the consumer. Again, I support what you do. I don't know why there's this resistance to the reality that it's a tax that's going to be paid by our constituents. With all the revenue this Commonwealth has, I don't know why I can't imagine that it's not unanimous view of the members of the House and Senate that these services you provide are critical to our communities. And I don't know why we don't instead of fighting to hurt the taxpayer, we ought to be fighting to make this a priority in the budget.
Thank you very much. What I'm saying, and I worked in the cable industry for 10 years in Colorado and Ohio. The franchise fees have nothing at all to do with the price structure. They're just incremental. They're not germane to the overall business plan. That is simply a talking point, and that's also part of the deregulatory deconstruction that cable companies have done to tell that story. And they list that on the bill specifically to provoke people to say, see this tax you have to pay. Gee, couldn't we get rid of that? It's a fraction. It's a tiny fraction of whatever cost they're paying to do business. And every business has costs to do business. Would you say that you just eliminate all regulations and let there be a Wild West? I don't think so. I mean, it has to benefit the public at the end of the day. And this kind of streaming fee, if you want to find a regulatory scheme that works, this is it. The money that's being dedicated goes right to the communities and serves a great number of people. If Comcast has to pay that, fine. That's benefiting far more people than the highest shareholders of Comcast, in my view, or Netflix.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing that there's no one, thank you. Seeing that there's no one else here to testify, thank you all for attending. And our next hearing will be in the fall. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.